it's very easy to make content. But I think that when you have people who are using the medium to inspire, to inform, to really help advance things, I think that because it's not always as instantly gratifying, that is something that we really need to focus on, and that's something that we do need to help support. Because I don't know if a guy that filmed his dog surfboarding needs our help. He's got his views and it's fantastic. I've watched it 1,000 times. I love it. But I don't know that needs the support. But some of these documentaries that are telling the story of underserved communities, those are the people that need us, to help support that, help get that to more people. And because not only is it an important story, but it's being told in such a masterful way.
Hi, my name is Jim Ellis, and this is Industry Insights, where we bring in industry professionals to share their knowledge and experience to the next generation of filmmakers. Today, our guest is DJ Summit. DJ is the president of the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences for the Southwest region. He's also the founder of FilmWorks, where he does dynamic motion graphics, animation, and visual effects for clients such as Carrie Underwood and Jennifer Lopez, the Atlantic Fest, the Masked Singer, and The Voice. DJ, glad to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it. It's great to be here.
Yeah. So I understand you live right here in Vista.
Yeah, about 2 miles that way.
Well, that's awesome.
It's been here for about 6 years.
Yeah, good. I was thinking maybe we should start with defining some of these disciplines that you've worked on for the last number of years.
Sure.
What is motion graphics? Start there.
Yeah, so the way I always like to say, this is how I describe them to my mom. So motion graphics is kind of everything that you see on a TV show that is not filmed with a real camera. Anything that's not physically filmed with a Canon, a food, whatever. That's motion graphics. It can be anything from lower thirds to an open, the intro. To, for example, like what I do on The Masked Singer is the backgrounds behind the performances. That's considered, motion design as well. So anything that it's literally just, graphic design with motion. What you get into then is, from that, all of these things are motion design, but all of these, motion design is not all of these things. So there's visual effects. Visual effects is a little different. Usually visual effects almost always involves something that was filmed with a camera. So it's, the obvious choice is when you get into horror films, the blood effects, if someone gets shot and the arm falls off, visual effects. Right. But it's not always as dramatic as that. I worked on the film called King Knight, and we did a lot of just sign replacements. So you take an old, for example, we took an old hotel that was out in the desert, and we wanted to turn it into, a functional hotel that's not out of business. So we create our own sign, we track it into the shot, we put it there, we make it look like the sun's hitting it, all those different things. And there's a lot of visual effects like that. You also get into digital makeup, to where you age or de-age an actor, cover up a tattoo or a cut, or add a cut, same kind of thing. There, I think there's visual effects in most films that you find. It might be something as simple as just covering up a label on something or something along those lines. But that's visual effects.
Adding smoke to a smokestack in the background.
A lot of smoke, a lot of scene replacements, scene extensions.
What about animation? How's that different from motion graphics?
So animation typically is what we all think of when we think of what we watched as kids. That's the proper terminology of it, is you get into character animation. But from a higher level, animation is what makes the motion in motion design. Animation is just any time that you take a still item and then manipulate it over time. So animation can be stop motion. It doesn't necessarily have to be done on a computer or with a pencil or pen and paper. It can, but anytime you're taking something and manipulating it to move over time, animation.
Would that be more of storytelling when you put animation with that category more so?
I would say so. I mean, motion design is the frosting on it. It's not always, necessarily deeply telling the story. I mean, it helps, for example, a lower third will help identify who someone is. But the animation is really telling the story. It's really developing the characters. It's really and even if there's not a character, even if it's non-representational, there's still a character. There's something that you're, the focal point, and it's building that kind of emotional connection to it. Well, if you do it right, it's connecting.
Yeah.
It's building that emotional
Right.
connection.
Yeah. Well, that's cool.
So.
So, what got you in the business? What was your inspiration to do this?
Yeah. So I guess the quick elevator bio is I went to film school and I wanted to.
Out here?
Well, I went into University of North Carolina at Greensboro.
Ah.
Yeah, so I wanted to take real cameras out, and I wanted to be David Fincher. I wanted to be Darren Aronofsky. Those were the guys that were really big at the time. That was who I wanted to be. But I realized really quickly that I just didn't have that personality. It's just not. I'm not very good at asking for favors. I'm not really good at kind of pushing through a lot of those things. I'm a little bit more reserved, and I found out that I really like to edit. At the time, this was, and this is one of those stories that I always wonder if I should say, but it was really big to get the trial versions of software, and then if you could crack it, you had free software.
Yeah, of course.
So I was the only person at my university that could figure out how to crack the software. So I had free versions of Adobe Premiere and After Effects starting my freshman year of college. And so by the end, our computer labs closed at 10. So if you needed anything done, after 10 p.m., and we all know college students don't do anything before 10 p.m., you had to come to me to edit your movie. So I was editing everybody's movies. I was doing all the animation. And so that worked out really well for me. By the end, I was able to get an internship with a place that worked very closely with NASCAR. They taught me how to edit a little bit more structured. And then from Baltimore, I moved up to Baltimore, became an editor. But the whole time, all of my edits were very flashy. There was just a lot of bells and whistles. Maybe one could argue too much, but there was just a lot of flash to it.
Transitions.
A lot of transitions, just a lot of stuff going on. And as time went on, I kept finding that I was having problems kind of connecting to edit positions, to edit jobs. But I was getting these like really flashy things, and eventually I realized there's this whole world of motion design, and like that's what I was. I was never an editor. I was a square peg in a round hole, and that was the reason I was having difficulty. So once I kind of really changed the way I looked at things, started really interfacing with motion graphics artists, and motion designers, like it was much more of a natural fit. I was advertising myself in a way that kind of helped my clients understand what I did, and it really took off.
Well, it sounds like you've got an analytical mind, and that's perhaps why you got into motion graphics more so. A lot of math, maybe some more so than editing, right?
Yeah, there's definitely, I'm terrible at math, but I guess maybe not. Maybe I'm not. There is a lot of math, particularly on the 3D side of things. When you get into a lot of that, there's also a lot of code stuff, which probably helped with the, since I was able to crack the software back then, because this was back before you could easily just type in a serial. You had to actually do code.
So after you cracked the software, did you have to change your name to DJ or something?
No. I had my own little special name. It was Zero with an X, Xero. I don't know if that's how you would pronounce it, but I said it was Zero.
Where'd DJ come from?
So I was named after my dad. So my name's Danny Summit. So that's the D, and then since I was named after my dad, it's Junior.
Got it.
So yeah, I wanted to sound cool, and people still come up to me. I'm originally from Charlotte, and they always come up to me and tell me I sound like I'm from should be a NASCAR driver with DJ Summit, but
All right.
yeah.
That's good. Well, that was your first company that you worked for, right? NASCAR.
Yeah. That was the first one. Was down there in Charlotte. So it was a good time.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Summit Filmworks, right?
Yeah.
Is the name of your company?
That is.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I had spent some time at Hewlett-Packard as their creative director for application content globalization. So basically, we did everything that they do.
Now that's after you moved out here.
Yeah, I was living in Vista at that time,
Okay.
and they did everything for the Europe, Mideast, and Asian markets. So anything that you'd see over there that was advertising, and I was creative director of that. And it was great. I had met a lot of good people, did a lot of good work, but I was starting to feel like I wanted to do something more than just printers. I wanted to kind of expand outside of that. So I talked to a friend who has a production company in San Diego, and he kind of told me that there was a lack of motion designers that he was aware of in the area. So I really, so I started hitting the market around here pretty hard, and I wanted it to seem like it was a little bit more established than just me out of my house, because I felt like I was providing a service that was more than just me out of my house. I felt like I was kind of giving a higher level of service than than just a freelance, you know. So I went ahead and started it as an LLC as Summit Filmworks. And I wanted, you know, Filmworks, I wanted it to cover all the things I did because at that time I was particularly focused. I did a lot of visual effects. But I also,
Which kind?
so it was a lot into horror movies because, like I said, those are the ones that, you know, really, for one, I love horror, but those are also the ones that usually have the most. You know, I did King Knight. I worked with Ricky Bates Jr. a lot. There was, you know, King Knight was one of his.
Did you do like motion capture, that kind of effects?
No, it was a lot of screen replacements. You know, as you may know, like anytime someone uses a cell phone on TV, that's a screen replacement. They're changing the screen out because it just doesn't film very well. So, you know, we had upwards of 30 in one film. A lot of blood effects too. Those were kind of the big things, just compositing things on top of things to make it feel, you know, to feel better. But on top of that, we, you know, the very first project I had as a freelancer was with a studio here also in Vista, Drive Studio. And they did well, with them, we did the graphics for the 2016 World Cup when it was in Russia. And they also did the 2017 World Cup that was in Paris. They're a fantastic studio. So they, you know, I left Hewlett Packard to kind of do my first freelance project there with them. But I wanted it to be Filmworks because I did motion design, I did visual effects, I was still editing at that time, you know, so I did a little bit of everything in the video world, and I wanted to kind of capture that with it. And I also like the concept of Filmworks. It's you know, kind of I don't know if pun's the right word, but it's something. But you know, so from there, you know, I started developing a brand for it. You know, and it's really taken off. Like I've been extremely lucky. With the pandemic specifically, it was a very difficult time because at that point I had kind of positioned myself with sports and conventions, and as we both know, both of those just stopped. And I was able to within a few weeks kind of move over to television, and that was when I got Masked Singer. That was when I got The Voice. That was when I got Disney's Magic Bake Off. You know, and a lot of the shows that I still work on today. And then kind of concerts came. Once those started coming back, the concerts kind of came from there. But it was really a you know, harrowing time for, I mean, obviously for everyone, but to be able to kind of step over and you know, reinvent the company at that point was pretty beneficial. So,
Yeah, it was a challenge for a lot of people. You're right. Glad you came through it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the software that you use for, let's say, motion graphics, is it still Adobe products?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that every day I touch, you know, I'm in After Effects probably the most, Adobe After Effects. And then with that comes, you know, Photoshop, Illustrator. I use some Premiere, but I'm just faster, even unless it's a big actual edit project. I'm just faster in After Effects and just can kind of piece it together there. But I do also co-manage the San Diego Premiere Pro user group. So, you know, we talk about Premiere and After Effects. But also in a day, almost every day, I'll be inside of Cinema 4D because my specialty is kind of 3D. So I touch Cinema 4D every day, and out of that, I run the renderers Octane, Corona, Arnold, and Redshift, mostly Octane. And then been getting into Houdini and the Unreal Engine. So,
oh yeah, Unreal Engine's unreal.
yeah, it's crazy. It's great stuff
All the
though.
plugins and
Yeah.
so tell me what makes a good motion graphic.
Oh, when I figure it out, I'll tell you now. You know, I think that one of the things that we talked about, and this is where I am going to step on something that we said earlier of like animation being the storytelling. I think for it to be a good motion graphic, like everything should tell a story. Even, you know, when the way that the lower third comes on and off, like there has to be a story and internal logic there. I think, yeah, there has to be a motivation for it. I think that, you know, earlier I said that a lot of the projects that I did when I thought I was an editor maybe had too much kind of bells and whistles, and it was because I didn't know why I was doing it. It was just, I had this thing that I had learned and I could do stuff, so I'm gonna do it. But really having a motivation and using that to influence the story, I think that it's, as soon as you learn After Effects or Cinema 4D, you know, you have this desire to make stuff really like sparkly. But you'll realize really quickly that you're taking away, you know, film is a collaborative art, and you're taking away from a lot of really good performances to do that. You know, I remember specifically, I did this really cool thing in a film that I'd worked on. It was, you know,
a pretty good performance. I mean, it was luckily it was student era, so no, I didn't ruin anything, but it was some pretty good acting performances, and I had broken the shot apart and had it come together as like this vector art. Looked really cool. Completely destroyed the performances though. It didn't really work there. And it was years before I realized why that was, because I was so proud of, patting myself on the back for doing this cool kind of technical thing. But it's really about knowing when to step up and when to step back, and also knowing at what point of realism are you trying to aim for. So there's a lot of people who do 2D. They're not really going for realism, and that's great. Like, those people are immensely talented. 2D's not, like, I can do 2D, and I feel like I'm pretty strong in it, but it's not why you necessarily hire me. On the 3D side of things, I do stuff for Masked Singer, which is obviously not going to be realistic most of the time because everything's neon and wacky. But there's also been times, like for the Latin Grammys, where we recreated an old Mexican village, and we had flowers falling, and just knowing kind of the right visual signifiers to hit. And I think that to make a good motion design piece, you have to have that motion, those visual signifiers. You have to have that backing. So it's not about go out and learn all the things about After Effects. Like, that will help you, but it only helps you to a point.
Yeah.
What's important is go learn everything you can about like Mexican architecture, or, Hawaiian art, or the way that an engine works. All of those things are going to, those are going to give you the visual signifiers and internal logic to be able to put things together in ways that are, maybe a little bit more...
to make them look genuine.
Yeah, it looks genuine because those things will stand out. Like, the things like when even if you're not a motion design artist, even if you're not a filmmaker, if you're watching TV, you'll see something, you're like, I don't know what it is, but something about that's weird. And those are the things that it just lacks in internal logic. Something seems forced, and to be fair, sometimes those are the things that a producer came in 30 minutes before it was supposed to air and say, we need this here now. Like, okay. But other times, that could have been avoided just with a little bit of, a little bit backing.
Perhaps that's the difference between amateur and a professional, right? You go through those levels in your career where you're just trying to make a flashy something to get people's attention rather than add to what's being done.
Absolutely, and I think that it's potentially a problem with the industry, but it's not a solvable one, to where, like, when you start out, it is an arms race. You need to be the person that can do X, Y, that can do all the things. You've not been in the software as long as other people have. So they want you, so you're expected to be able to perform really well to be able to get the job, but you also have to be able to make sure that the text can animate in a way, and like you can do all the technical side of things. So I know for the first 10 years I was doing it, it was just an arms race of like, let me get down all the technical like bells and whistles. And then that was really when it hit me of, it was probably 2011. I went to Adobe Max and I was watching stuff and I was like, why is this so different than what I do? It just, something, I at this point I had even done the opening titles for CSI New York. I mean, I had done high level things, but I couldn't put my finger on what was the differentiator. And finally I realized that it was the why. It wasn't that it was, I could do everything that was up there,
Push all the
but
buttons.
I would have never chosen to do it because I didn't know why they were doing it.
Right.
And that was where things really started to take a step.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it was, and it's not, in my opinion, it's not necessarily until you have all those bells and whistles that you then have the freedom to be able to explore that.
Then you have the confidence to just move
You have the
forward.
confidence, but also you have the projects that warrant it. I mean, because at a certain point, it is someone calling you and just saying like, I need a logo to breathe, whatever. You're like, okay, whatever you say. I need to pay rent. So,
Would you say working with a team of people helps to make good work, or do you like working by yourself? Or
I like both. I think that especially when you're first starting out, I mean, it's almost, it's so crucial when you're first starting out to work with other people, because you're going to learn from those people. You're going to get, a lot of input from those people. They're going to teach you how to do things. So I was the sole editor at the place that I worked in Baltimore. I was the sole motion designer at a few places that I had been. So I did kind of live in this enclosed environment where there was no senior motion graphics person to kind of teach me things up until I was at Qualcomm. It was just me. And I think that my learning curve could have been flattened a little bit had someone been there to say, like, walk past my desk and say, hey, it's not going to work.
Wow. Well, I appreciate the fact that you said you worked for 10 years learning the software. That speaks loudly to me because I think some people think they can just learn in a few months and get ready and be at that level that they want to be, but it takes some time.
It does.
Everything takes time, I think. And then the fact that software keeps changing and you got to keep adapting. And
Most software, I mean, maybe not Word and Excel, but most software, it's like those, it's a glass that's this tall. And I think that it's easy to think that you know it when you have this much water in the glass, because you can do the things. And for the longest time, I thought I knew it. It's like, oh, I can make the things move. And then I found, you know, I've been doing it all the wrong way. And, you open up this entire, other 75% of the software that you didn't even realize was there. And I still don't use, all of it because I just don't, there is a certain point where you kind of have the things you do. But I remember even in, I think it was 2014, I learned Mocha, which I don't know who owns Mocha now, maybe Boris, but it's used for tracking. It's a planar tracking, so it's how you make sure that it's the best way to do signs that stick in place, those phones, that kind of thing. And I remember that after I learned it, all of my projects for 2 years was that. And it was not because necessarily I was even aiming for that. It was just this, all of a sudden, you have this new thing and people start coming to you for it. And it was something that I could, had gone 13 years in my career not even knowing that it was possible or not even thinking about it. And then one day I found it and it changed my 2-3 years. Yeah, it changed everything.
That's a great principle of life. I mean, if you're prepared in a certain category, then the work is going to come in that category.
Yeah,
I firmly believe that for sure.
It does. It always reminds me of a trip that I took with my family. This is a little sidebar, but it was one of these cross-country trips when I was a kid, and we stopped at a place in Mitchell, South Dakota, made completely out of corn. None of us had ever heard about it before. It was called the Corn Palace. It was amazing. But none of us had ever heard of it, and as soon as we left, we were driving across South Dakota, and then we started seeing U-Hauls that have those, the stamps on it, and they were all for the Corn Palace. We'd never heard of it before. Now I still see it to this day. Can't get away from the Corn Palace. Corn Palace is everywhere.
What is the Corn Palace?
It's amazing. I think it's like a little municipal stadium. I think the high school uses it for basketball or something. But it's made entirely out of corn, and I think they change it every year. I think they built it in the 30s. I don't know about that, but they've been changing it every year, and it's to show the harvest of the regions. In Mitchell, South Dakota, it's really impressive.
That is impressive. I thought you were talking about a restaurant or something.
No, it's the Corn Palace. It's really fantastic. It kind of has a Eastern European, or at least when I went, it had this. It's got the onion domes. It's
trippy.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Huh. So when you're working with these high-profile stars, say Jennifer Lopez, Carrie Underwood, do they do all the design, or does their team give you a design? Or do they say, this is what we're thinking, you design it, and run with it?
There's varying levels. So with Jennifer Lopez, they have a creative director, I step in and I take over kind of what they want. They give me a pretty good direction on that. What they want has kind of been fleshed out, at least in a drawing or something along those lines. With Carrie Underwood, there was a little bit of a difference. That was much more in my court on that. And so we sat down and we figured out, I was kind of given the background on what's in the videos, what's kind of the aesthetic that they've used in other songs. But
so these are all for music videos, right? Or for stadium, for live concerts?
So in both, I do live concerts mostly. So for example, I'll give you a good example. With Jennifer Lopez, I did Jenny from the Block. That was one of the songs that I did for her show it was in Central Park during the pandemic. It was one of those Global Citizen Live where they were raising money for frontline workers. So with that, I was given a PowerPoint with lots of slides of here's New York looking things, because they wanted it to feel very New York. She's Jenny from the Block. It's talking about her past there. And so they gave me a lot of, these are kind of some of the imagery we want to see, but also here is some of the art style we want in that, so it was kind of like a mood board of those two pieces. And I did multiple songs for her like that. And so, another one was, I don't remember the name of the song, but I remember it was the one that was themed to Flashdance, because that's one of my favorite movies, Flashdance. And it was just, we just did these red pulsating lights behind her on the boards. It was, it was pretty minimal.
These are digital boards.
Yeah, these huge LEDs. I mean, just different shapes and sizes, and when we just did red outlines on it. So they've given a lot of that kind of look. But with Carrie Underwood, we sit down and we're like, all right. So for example, "Hate My Heart" was the single that came out during that tour. This was a 42 stop tour. Hate My Heart was one of the big songs we wanted to hit really hard. They show, that she had a mic stand that had a heart on it, was wrapped in barbed wire. So we kind of make it this heart that then explodes and comes together and explodes and comes together, and it's pulsating with the music. We've added this kind of digital noise. So I was able to take something that was from the song, then bring that to life. But in other situations, I think it was Cowboy Casanova, we did the snake thing. But it's just coming from conversations. Like there's not necessarily a backing to it. The same goes with the big finale was Before He Cheats, which is her, I dug my key into the side, that song. I'm not going to sing. But we took these kind of like phone booth kind of towers and we filled them with smoke. So we knew, we had kind of worked on the show and we figured out that her song Burn was going to be where we spent all of our money on fire. And we'd done fireworks during Cry Pretty, so this was going to be our big smoke. We just had a lot of smoke going on. So we brought that into the piece and we kind of filled these chambers with smoke. And to add some tension, like the smoke wasn't quite getting it there. So I made a call at the last minute to add some embers in there just to give it a little bit of a smolder. But you kind of bring those elements in and you just start laying pieces on just to give intensity. And then it's all about, changing it up. You kind of have a look for the verse, you have that pulse, then you switch over to the choruses and you just build it that way. But that one's super collaborative. You asked about, is it better to work with people? Once you get past the learning stage, you're never past the learning stage, but once you kind of get past that formative stage, I think the benefit of working with people is really, I'm never going to have the best idea alone.
Right.
Yeah. I might have a great idea, and that's hopefully why people are hiring me. But if I talk to everybody else and get their take on it, someone's going to say something that can take that just
Take it
up
to
a
the
little.
next level.
Yeah, but it was kind of known, like when Carrie Underwood called, they told me that it was a country music artist. They couldn't tell me who it was yet. I hadn't signed the NDAs or anything, but they said that it was a country music artist who was starting a tour in mid-October. And it was a really big artist. So I looked it up and I knew that it was either Travis Tritt or Carrie Underwood. And I looked at knowing my reel and knowing what my style is, I knew that I was a really bad match for Travis Tritt.
Yeah.
But Carrie Underwood had her newest album was called Denim and Rhinestones. And like, that is my motif. Like, that's my style. It's sparkly. It's a little, it's got a little bit of an edge to it. But it's not like super edgy. And so we all kind of knew going in what we were aiming for.
So these folks called you on, because they saw some of your work, if somebody referred you?
Yeah, so the way that one worked, from my understanding, is that they got my information from Jennifer Lopez. Jennifer Lopez got my information from Steve Aoki, so I'm kind of working the way through. So who knows who we'll call next?
Oh, that's great.
Hopefully someone.
Is there any particular visual effects that you particularly like to do, more so than others?
I like, the thing I like about the visual effects in general is that it's so different, it's just so different all the time. I think that it's really fun when, I guess my favorite, it's not the style, it's not the piece, it's the way it works, Hate My Heart's a great example where we had done the entire concert. The concert was finished except Hate My Heart. And we were talking like 2 days before we were up in Pennsylvania at the time. The entire set moved and went down to Greenville for the first show. We had 2 days before that, and I was not going to South Carolina. There was kind of this feeling that like Hate My Heart had gone back. Nobody had seen anything. I was the only person that had seen anything with it, and it was just taking forever. And so I remember I sat on the stage and I looked over and said, I said to Carrie, I was like, hey, this is gonna have to be really good to warrant how long everybody's had to wait. And everybody was kind of like, yeah, it is. Oh no. And so I called everyone to my office later and I was like, here's what I got. This is the first half of the song, but it's rendered. You can take a look at it. And it had cost about $900 just to render the first half of the song for a first pass, which was eating into my render budget quite a bit. And they loved it. And which was great because I didn't really have the budget to re-render. I had to figure out something else. Yeah. But those are the moments where it really that's the ones that I enjoy the most, is when things are, when you pull kind of a win out of something that was not great, like when you have a piece that maybe there's a saying that you have a lot that it's better than it should be, and those are the ones that I enjoy the most. Is when you can kind of figure out a way to take something that should be kind of bland, or that a lot of people would kind of phone in, and turn that into a real moment. That's why I do it. Because I get to do something different every day. I got to make a heart explode, and then the next, on like 2 hours later, I'm making this snake go through a metal field, and then like I'm doing a big church bell kind of thing. It's just fun. So,
Oh, that's great. Yeah. So I mean, obviously, when these concerts go on, there's, I don't know, 50,000 people watching. I understand some of your work's been in Times Square. A lot of people view it. I mean, how does that make you feel? So many people get to see your work.
Oh, it's great. So those are actually two different examples. So I remember I didn't get to see. We ran the concert 30 times in Pennsylvania, so I had seen the concert. But I went to the LA show when Carrie Underwood came, and it was the first time I had seen an entire concert I had done with it live, and it was incredible. It was, to look around, I kind of kept looking around. Like I would turn around from the stage and look at all these people, and I know that they're not there. I'm not Kobe in that situation, but we sold out Staples Center. I realize I'm not Kobe, but like I'm at a world peace. They're still there to see me do, my thing, and that was a real moment. And I think that, but even more so the Times Square stuff. I went to see it in Times Square. It was on the Digital Godzilla, which is the biggest screen in the world. It's there on the right on Times Square at the Marriott Marquis. It's the length of a city block, and then 50 feet on both sides of that. And it's I did 200 of those for Sirius XM, and it was wild to see it, because the thing that really speaks to me on that is nobody's necessarily looking up to see it. They're not there. They're not coming to Times Square to see my stuff. But that's what's even more incredible, is like you could no longer tell the story of these people's lives with what we did. We became the tapestry of the culture, kind of the background. And I think that there's something kind of beautiful in that. And a side note about the Times Square piece, which I think is a kind of a fun little story. When in 1998, there was a show on MTV called Total Request Live. And after school every day, I would go home and watch it with my friend Zach. We would watch it, and we would fanboy over our favorite band, Korn. I remember one day Korn was on, and I told him they were unveiling their new album, and there was a big billboard in Times Square. And I remember I told him, dude, one day I am going to be on one of those billboards with Korn. Or I'm going to be on one of those billboards. I don't know if I said with Korn. And the second billboard that I did when I took over from SiriusXM was announcing the new Korn album. So I had it printed huge. It's in my office on a big sheet of metal.
How cool is
that? It took me 20 years, but I was able to finally get do my Korn billboard in Times Square. So.
Isn't that something? I love that. I think expectation has a lot to do with success, and I think you've proven that again. That you just expected to get there. So. You're president of the National Association of Television Arts and Sciences for the Southwest region, right?
Yep.
So one of their products is the Emmys. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I was at CBS in Los Angeles, and I'd worked on Big Brother, and that's through the Television Academy, which is a different organization than the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. But I was nominated there, and it was kind of my first foray into the Emmys, and I was just really... And it's the biggest award, So I came back here, and I wanted to get involved with the chapter here. And the Pacific Southwest chapter specifically covers the area. Our kind of two anchor large markets are San Diego and Las Vegas, but we also include Bakersfield, parts of Orange County, San Luis Obispo, Santa Margarita, those areas. So and Palm Springs. So I wanted to get involved on those, and it was really getting involved to not just award excellence within broadcast, but it was to really take and at this pivotal moment when video is everywhere, how can we kind of elevate the craft? I think because one of the things that I always kind of used to get grumbly about as an old, me being the old man, was that I could make I could make a short film and it would get 50 views on YouTube, but like a surfboard, a dog on a surfboard gets like 900 million. And that's fine, but it's a matter of like, how can we then elevate, the true storytellers? How can we create kind of a meritocracy? And that was already being done. So I wanted to kind of get in with that. I wanted to be able to help elevate that. And I wanted to be able to help elevate our region, because I think that San Diego and Las Vegas, Palm Springs, San Luis Obispo, all these areas are doing fantastic work, and they're doing important work. when there's a mudslide, for example, like that, it just happened during all the rains in this, up in the Central Coast area, people need to know that. And, there are people out there every day telling those stories. The Academy is, we're focused on not just news, but all, but independent production. But I wanted to explore both, and I wanted to be able to really represent members from both, and be able to go onto a national stage and say like, hey, look, we're doing fantastic work. I mean, when on 1 October, the shooting in Las Vegas, like the people stepped up and represented the community, informed the community of what was going on. They were there to help connect loved ones to the services that they needed, and I think that serves a really important thing. Then you bring that into the independent production side of things, where people are telling the stories for a brand, they're telling a documentary. And I think that it's like, that's the kind of thing we need right now, is because we have a lot of, it's very easy to make content. But I think that when you have people who are using the medium to inspire, to inform, to really help advance things, I think that because it's not always as instantly gratifying, that is something that we really need to focus on, and that's something that we do need to help support, because I don't know if a guy that filmed his dog surfboarding needs our help. He's got his views and it's fantastic. I've watched it 1,000 times. I love it. But like I don't know that needs the support. But like some of these documentaries that are telling the story of underserved communities, those are the people that need us, to help support that, help get that to more people. And because not only is it an important story, but it's being told in such a masterful way, and it's dealing with issues that are important to thousands of people. And I think that's, or millions in, most cases. And so I think that's the reason I got involved, was to really help kind of bring those to the forefront and just help support the broadcast throughout our region. And now I'm involved on a national level too, and it's just to kind of help broadcasting on the national, across the country.
That's great. I love that. I think art has a lot to do with elevating society to its greatest potential, and I think I really appreciate what your motive on that is. What do you do to decompress and get away from that? I mean, get outside. What do you like to do outside of that?
I have a 5-year-old son. He's the most amazing person. He's the best. So we watch Pokemon. We go to Ducks games. He's a big fan of the Anaheim Ducks until they start losing, and then he's a big fan of whoever's winning. He's a big fan of the Padres until he's not. He was telling me this morning he's a big fan of the Dodgers because the Dodgers beat the Padres. So he's a big fan of whoever's winning. Yeah. I told him he's disloyal, but I hang out with him. But I like watching movies. I like true crime. If you show me a serial killer documentary, I will watch it. So yeah, I like to I like a lot of turn off TV. Just the stuff that's as much as I say and talk about elevating the the importance. I like to watch stuff that I can just completely shut my brain off and just go. Just get entertained. One of my guilty pleasures is I do love to put on like jewelry TV or like the Home Shopping Network, because I can completely turn off and just watch things spin, the lights, and like I just don't think. It's almost like a meditation.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that's funny. Well, what kind of advice do you have for some of these folks that want to start in this industry?
All right, so if you're going to start in the industry, I guess my advice. Don't listen to your parents. No, that's actually somewhat true. Is I think that one of the things that really helped me was that I didn't give myself like a backup plan. I took a business minor, but that was mostly just to make sure that I didn't like spend all my money on, whatever. It was, I didn't have a backup plan. And one of the things that, the story I always give with that was I used to do competitive weightlifting, and I was strong. I could, at this point I was deadlifting between 400 and 500 pounds, Jeez. But I couldn't do a single pull-up. And one day I realized, I was like, okay, I keep going over to the assisted pull-up machine. I should be able to just rep these out. So I was hanging out. I'm like, all right, let me try to do one not on the assisted machine because someone was on it. And I did about 10. And I realized that when you have a backup plan, when you have something that's a way, when you give yourself the chance to fail, you will. Like, you just won't commit to it in the same way. So like I never really had a backup plan. I've never worked outside of the entertainment industry. I've never, I guess you could argue some of it's not super entertaining, but I've never worked outside of the film and video. And I think that was
crucially important was, there was always, if this doesn't work, I mean, obviously I'm not going to be destitute, but I'll figure, I would then take something. But it was never like, let me dabble in something to see. It was just, I'm going to give it my full. And I think that, some of that comes from a place of privilege that I was just able to do that. But I gave it everything I did. I kept showing up.
You're convinced that was your lane.
Yeah, it was the, it was the only thing I was, could do. Because it was the only thing I was trying to do. And at the end of the day, I didn't mind working for free. And I know that that's, controversial. And I'm not, I say, don't be afraid to work for free. I don't mean don't work for, work for free for Target. Don't work for free for Target. Target can pay you. But, my friends' films, or if there was a company, like a startup company that truly, did not have the budget, yeah, I'd put something together for them because, like, I'm getting to make stuff and it's going to help me. Those are the situations, but I would, I showed up, I worked on friends' films. I worked on, small projects that truly couldn't pay or could pay just, that much. And I still do today. I've worked on things that, were where I did not get paid the rate that would be fair, but I learned an amazing thing from it. And I'm not saying to do it for exposure. I'm saying to do it because you're going to get something out of it. Right. But, just make as much stuff as you can. And also the other thing that I would say is there was a place back in 2003 called mograph.net, and it was like a message board. And me and Beeple and the guys that started Grayscale Gorilla and School of Motion, like, we would all go there and we would, talk and we'd share our stuff. But I had a really big ego at the time, so I would never post any of my projects. And these guys did, and they'd sit there and tear each other down, and they would do great work. And they'd say, but then they'd come in and tell each other why their work sucked. And I could never do it because I didn't have it in me to find out why my stuff sucked. I was too precious about it. Yeah. And I would be a better designer today if I had it. Right. Had I just sucked it up and said, like, you know what, I am learning, and it is okay for it to suck. Like, that would have been fine, but I didn't, and that's the reason Beeple sold his stuff for $69 million, and I'm doing fine, but it's, I should have, and then so put your stuff out there. Don't be precious about it. Just let it get torn apart, especially when you're learning. Like, if my stuff got torn apart now, like, I'd be a little sad, but back then,
that's part of training.
I'm not supposed to make good stuff. I don't know why I had this, but you're learning. You're so precious about it, and I look back. You've
made it, and it's great. I don't care what you think.
And I can go back and look at stuff, and I see things that people would have pointed out to me that took me 5 and 6 years to learn. Yeah. And I could have fixed it in an afternoon.
Great advice. Yeah.
So I think that put your stuff out there, and just don't be precious about it. Keep going. Don't give yourself don't, if you can, don't give yourself a way to fail.
Yeah, that's great. I remember talking about parents. I remember my dad telling me to get into computers, and this is back in the 70s. And he's probably right, because obviously everything runs on a computer today. That wasn't my lane. I didn't think it was going to work for me, and I stayed in the film industry. But anyhow, parents have the right intention. They want you to be successful, but you got to follow your passion, and I think some great advice.
Yeah, I was lucky. When I told my parents I wanted to go to film school, my dad said, then make the best movies you can, and I do my best. Yeah. So they were both very supportive, so that was lucky in that.
So what's this T-shirt mean?
Oh, Highly Suspect. It's a band.
Oh, it's a band. Yeah. Oh, okay.
It's a band. One of my favorite bands.
Are you a musician of any kind?
I try to be. I play guitar. I play bass. I've performed a few times over at Aztec Brewery. I've been learning. But yeah, I'm working on it.
You got to let me know next time you're down there.
I will. I'm trying to put together an acoustic piece now, acoustic show now. If I ever just stick with the selections of songs, it's all covers. I do it for fun. It's just kind of an outlet. But if I ever actually pick the songs, I've probably had 7 different set lists, and as soon as I learn the song, I'm like, I don't want to do that one anymore. So we'll get there.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, your whole work. Your industry is pretty much the music industry where you do your work. So I figured you must be in the music some.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of music. Music is kind of, I wanted to go into music production, but I also realized I just don't quite have the ear for it. I think it's one of those. It's kind of like the person that's colorblind trying to go into being a colorist. It's just probably not going to be the best job. Kind of the same thing in my case. Like I can hear fine, but I don't have that perfect pitch of this is a G. Like I'm not close to that. I just kind of like it. Like it's got a cool groove. I'm into it.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Well, I sure appreciate you coming on. I
Oh.
think it was some very valuable information that you shared.
sincerely appreciate you having me. It's
Yeah.
been fun.
And look forward to hearing you play down the road here.
All right, I have to do better. We'll get something going.
Which website should they go to, or
Yeah.
how can they contact you, see what you're doing these days?
Sure, you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, at DJ Summit, DJ SUMMITT, two M's, two T's. You can also find me on Facebook at Summit Filmworks, SUMMITT, and then Filmworks. That's where you can find me.
For more information on the Film Hub, you can follow us on Instagram at the Film Hub Inc. or visit us on our website at thefilmhubinc.com. Thanks for coming in, and I'm not going to arm wrestle this guy.
The Film Hub. Inspire the creative. Ignite the world.